Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson, and my guest today is Ron Orenstein, who's the city councilman and vice mayor of the small town of Willits in Northern California, who somehow has learned about, in the last few years, this, localization project or the end of suburbia, and wasn't too sure about all that. Tell us how it got started for you.
Well, how I got started for me, I try to keep my ear up to the ground to find out what's going on in town, and I heard that they were showing this movie, End of Suburbia, at the Environmental Center. And since I'd never been to the Environmental Center, I thought, boy, this would be kind of cool. So I went there and saw it, and we had the discussion, and the next day in the newspaper I was quoted as having said something. And I felt at that point, okay, I'm hooked because I said something which was indicated that future action would be taken. So it sort of puts a commitment on one that one needs to follow through. So I sort of fell into it.
Whoa, they trapped you, or
They
you
did.
trapped yourself there,
They
huh?
did, yes, yes.
So where did that lead to? What happened after
Well,
that?
from that point, they kept moving to different venues because more and more people came, larger venues. And finally, the last time was at the charter school, which is right across the street from here. And somebody asked me if I could arrange to get the city to let them use the community center, which is right across the hall. And I did, and they've been meeting there ever since. And there again, I was hooked in, and I just kept coming to the meetings.
So these are meetings for the Willits Economic Localization
Right.
folks, alrighty. When did that how did that start to translate into action for the city council? Or what part of that message did you feel like you needed to take action on?
Well, it didn't happen for probably maybe 3 or 4 months after we were meeting, and we would meet every other week. So we had, maybe a dozen meetings, and we would split up into subgroups. Mm-hmm. One of them was the energy group that I hooked in with. I didn't know too much about energy, but I thought it would be something to be involved with. And they did a lot of work. They did, they did an inventory to find out what we use here in the way of different energies like natural gas or gasoline, wood, things like that, and also what our resources were to sort of get a starting point. This was very important. And then it's sort of, for my estimation, slowed down a little bit. I guess I'm action-oriented,
okay.
Or results-oriented. I need things to happen. So I sat quietly for a while. I really couldn't contribute much to the technical part of the thing. But then I saw that we seemed to hit a wall. And it occurred to me that maybe a way of moving this forward is to get the city to do a project. So I felt that the project would be to solarize the city buildings, which would be easier than trying to get the public to solarize their individual properties, because there you have an audience of 5,000 people. Here, sort of like a contained audience. So I decided that we'll take it that step further, and I proposed to the group that we were going to I was going to ask the city council to authorize an ad hoc committee to look into, energizing solar energy for the city facilities. And I said, by the way, you guys are going to be on the committee.
Okay.
Now, one of my things was I'm not what you would call an environmentalist. I guess I'm an environmentalist to the point where I don't want to see the world destroyed.
Okay.
I don't want to see our streams dirty or air or things like that. But I'm also pragmatic, and quite frankly, I didn't believe that solar energy was a feasible option for the city. It's just too expensive,
To set up all the arrays
Yeah.
and so on.
Right.
Okay.
Conventional wisdom has always been when the price of gasoline rises to, $100 a gallon or $10 or $5 or whatever,
Right.
some number in the future, then it might become cost effective to do solar energy or any other sort of alternative energy. And I kind of, believed this in the back of my head, but I sort of got a little curious. I wondered, I don't really know,
Okay.
and I've never seen the numbers. And the people in the group, well, they've been living with this. I mean, to them, this is their second nature. They don't have to justify it. They know that it's right. It's the right thing to do.
So you got to, so the task force that you put them on had to basically crunch the numbers. Is that right?
Well, partially.
What did they do?
It was proving to me that it was viable.
Okay.
That's what it became. It became an exercise, and I really made them crazy because, I'm a public official, and after I get off this committee, I'd be sitting up in my seat on the city council, and I would be voting on whatever I proposed. And when I put on that hat, I still have the interest of the public that I'm responsible for.
Right.
So I had to make very sure that what I was going to propose made sense. Mm-hmm. The environmental aspects of it, okay, that's a given.
Okay. But you had to make sure it had to make fiscal sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And longer term thinking
Right.
in here for your community.
Exactly. I mean,
And did it?
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's why I brought it to the council.
So you brought the measure to the council, and what happened?
What happened was, well, what I brought to the council was a request to authorize, there were some rebates that PG&E had offered. I wanted them to authorize us applying for the rebates. I wanted them to authorize us creating a request for proposal, RFP, to supply solar panels to the city, and to hire a consultant to help us put these things together. And I went to that meeting. I did a lot of paperwork. I did a lot of number crunching so everybody could understand what the economics were. And I was ready for a fight. And I was almost disappointed because I didn't get a fight.
Which says to me, you all and the group, whoever supported your task force, had done your homework.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the questions I'd ask, because this has come up in my county, is why now? Would it be wise to wait until later when the costs go down of doing solar arrays and or new technologies come in? I mean, wouldn't it be better to wait 5 years?
Well, I waited a long time until I bought a home computer because I wanted to wait till they perfected computers. They will never perfect computers. It's an ongoing thing. It's a moving target. Yeah, at some point in time, the technology will be perfect, the prices will be down, but it's never going to happen until a market is created. And this is one of the things with the solar initiatives that the governor has been pushing. There was a Million Solar Roofs initiative that he didn't sign because of labor issues. But then after that was gone, he turned around and he got with the PUC, and they created a program which actually duplicated what the Million Solar Roofs would have done. So the state is committed to solarizing the state, state government. The time is right. And whether or not, remember the whole thing started with this peak energy,
This peak oil idea
thing.
Right.
My contention is, there's a lot of disagreement as to when peak oil will actually occur. Next year, 3 years from now, 10 years, 50, whatever. My feeling is it doesn't matter exactly when it's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's the fact. The oil is in the ground. They're not making any new oil. And that's it. What's there is there. Maybe there's still more to be discovered, but it's still a finite supply. And it just doesn't make any sense to me to keep using that resource that's going to run out eventually. And eventually we're going to have to face the problem. So it seems to me it makes more sense to do it while we still have time than to wait until the day after we discover that the well is dry, and then we say, oops, we better solve it.
And we're in a panic.
Yeah.
And don't have any ways, haven't
Exactly.
figured out how to
Right.
do it.
So that's always been my approach to the thing. You know, environmentalism is wonderful, you know, and I'm not knocking it. And
But
I'm
that's not, but that wasn't your driving force
No.
in moving the solar initiative.
I accepted the fact that it's an issue and it needs to be solved, but then I put that away. And as a matter of fact, I complained a lot to the well group whenever they kept over and over again the Armageddon thing. And finally I stood up one day and I said, you know, that's enough. We've heard it. We got it. I don't want to hear it anymore. Now let's solve this problem. Let's fix it. You know, let's stop beating our breasts about where we're going and let's fix it. So that was sort of behind, you know, the whole thing.
Well, and one of your ways of fixing it is, okay, take an action that moves in the right direction.
Yeah.
And one of them then is the solar,
It was the start.
solarizing your, what else is in your thoughts, or what other activities have you done to help the city of Willits move, move towards, you know, a stronger city, you know, in that way, or less vulnerable? Have you done other things?
Well, I guess overall, it's, I don't want to scare everybody, and I don't want to be the poster child for, you know, leading the charge either. You know, there's a point. I just want to kind of, a little bit at a time, and I don't want to make, I realize I've used the word I an awful lot in the last 3 minutes, and that's probably more than I should have, but the thing is, this is an amazing community. There's a lot of community activism, a lot of volunteerism. My role, as I've defined it for myself, is to sort of act as a middleman between the liberals and the conservatives. Our liberals are ex-hippies. A lot of them have come up here in the 70s from Berkeley, and you know, they're the back to the earthers, they're the environmentalists, and they annoyed the heck out of a lot of the people who were here, who were loggers. But the loggers and the conservatives that I know are real people. You know, they're good people. They just have a slightly different take on the thing. And sometimes what I have perceived as being the biggest problem between the two groups is the language, the misunderstanding, the preaching, and the lack of, and you know, all this other stuff that gets in the way of progress. So I've sort of put myself in a place where I relate to the both sides. And I've noticed in the last, I'm not saying it's due to my effort, but I've noticed in the last couple of years that they're getting closer together in their thinking.
Which is a combination of your effort and perhaps, I'm guessing, looking at the fact that whenever the energy declines, we're all in this together. I mean, everybody needs to eat and have water and share this town, and don't want to have all the trees cut down everywhere, whatever it might be. That you're helping to find common ground. Is that a way to think about it?
Yeah, and again, I don't want to say that I'm doing it. You know,
you're part of that movement. How's that?
Yeah,
Is that fair to
there's
say?
a lot
There's
of
a lot of people trying to do that.
There's a dialogue that has occurred.
In that regard, your community, like mine in Nevada County, we're looking at how do we talk to each other, because there are those polarities exist in our country.
Sure.
In many ways. What kinds of points of view could you offer to other city council people, supervisors? What kind of advice would you give them, or think that you've learned here in Willits that could be useful in other municipalities?
Good question.
I'll just ask you the big stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, that's a good question, and as you were posing it, it occurred to me how I made whatever transition I made. Now, I've been working with the environmental people for close to a year and a half on this is how long we've been going on this thing. And, you know, basically, they're good people and I like them, but I can't spend a lot of time with them. And I've told them this too. We joke about it. We're not that different. We're really not. And I think I lost my train of thought
I was
somehow.
asking you about where we go to what can you share for other supervisors, other council people, other officials?
Right. I
Okay.
think what it is the first thing you need to do is to get away from the stereotypes, pull back from the message. In other words, you look at this group of people and you say, they're environmentalists, and you shut the switch. The switch turns off because I'm going to hear the same old, same old. So you have to get over that and find that you really have a lot in common. I mean, the peak energy thing, the peak oil, the pollution of the planet, all of the things, the energy crisis that we're facing, these are common and we all have to face them. Now maybe an environmental type person is living off the grid and it doesn't matter if the price of gasoline goes up because he rides a bicycle or whatever. And maybe on the other side of the spectrum, you have a guy who drives his big SUV and he's got a lot of money in his pocket. And if he's paying $3 a gallon for gasoline, it's not that big a deal.
Right.
But still, all of them know that it's not good. The situation is not good. And we need to do something about it. So I think that we need to take the evangelical aspect out of the message and just get it down to common sense. And I guess that's the measure that I use to see if something is the right thing to do. Does it make sense economically, or I was about to say morally, but see, that's another one of those words.
It can be soft, but there's some innate sense of right and wrong, or not hurting others, or some moral compass that's been lost in part from our discussions here.
Exactly, and I think one of the reasons why it got lost was because it's attached to the other side of the spectrum. You see, so you have guilt by association. So, and this is the way that I approach the project that we did. If it makes good sense, if it makes good sound fiscal sense, and just makes sense to do something like this, then we should do it.
Are there other actions or ideas, visions that you've done that make sense towards having Willits be more sustainable or lower energy, or what else have you been doing or thinking?
I've gotten more involved with READY. I don't know if you've spoken with them.
Which is what? READY means what? Renewable? Is it the Renewable
Energy Development Institute.
Okay.
They're a local organization. They're a nonprofit organization, and they're involved with those things. They have a lot of good visions, like light rail in town, for example, solar-powered vehicles, smart growth. We have our community development director who is very progressive, and together as the city council and the community development director and the citizens in the community have come together at various visioning meetings to get a vision of what the city should look like in the near future.
Who's brought that together?
It started out several years ago with some unholy bedfellows, the Environmental Center, the Chamber of Commerce, and the City of Willits. Which was the first.
That's an amazing
juxtaposition.
Reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was the first time that these three groups got together on a project.
And was it simply to focus on what was
This
your
was on
mission?
walkable communities.
How to do a walkable community.
And the Environmental Center brought in a speaker, Dan Burden, and he's from Florida, I think. And they invited me to a meeting to do this thing, and the first reaction was they just wanted to go it alone, keep the city out of it. And I said, you can't do this. This was before I was on the city council. I was a troublemaker even then. I said, you can't do this. If you're going to do something like this, you need to get the city on board. You need to. And they did.
A walkable city is
Yeah,
about the city here.
yeah.
I mean.
See, part of the problem, and we've been learning a lot from each other, and I've been teaching them, to my credit, I've been teaching them different things, because most of these folks were Vietnam War protesters. You know, that's how they learned their trade. They're activists, they're demonstrators, you know, they felt that the only way they could get the message across is to beat on the doors and make the government listen. And frankly, that was the only way to do things on that level. So they would bring that here to Willits. And in order to get anything done in Willits, they felt that was the only way they could affect change. My feeling was that this is not the federal government, it's not the state, this is a small town. As city council members, I walk down the street and people know me, they see me, they know how to find me. They don't have to beat down the doors. They don't have to come and protest. All they have to do is have a conversation. And it took them a while to understand that, but they finally got it. And now the partnerships between all of the diverse elements in the city is so much better.
So you've got environmentalists, the business community, some parts of the business community, and government.
Yeah. Can't get any better than that.
No, it can't. One of the things that we know that you've done is a kind of joint statement with that and other organizations, some of your nonprofits as well, I think, towards sort of a healthy, sustainable Willits is what I remember from the language.
And essentially that's it. The actual language is not as important as the sentiment. And basically what it's saying is what we all believe, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, Green, whatever. We all want the same thing. We want a healthy world.
How do you, has there been pressure or movement in your community towards smart growth, or how do you respond to development and so on? Where's that sitting?
Well,
because that's a tough nut.
It is, and it's been kind of interesting because until just recently, we never had an issue of development. Nobody developed here. Now, all of a sudden, with the price of real estate south of here, we have on the books probably over 200 new housing units that are either going through the approval process or in the planning or whatever.
Which is a lot for your town.
Yeah.
We've got 4,000 that are on the books.
This probably represents maybe 10% increase in 2 years.
Okay.
So now we've been meeting about the smart growth and the smart planning communities and this sort of thing. The developers, little by little, we're learning, but we may have to put the brakes on a little bit until we get everything together, so it doesn't get away from us. But generally speaking, people are accepting the concepts of walkable communities. You know, they're fighting with where we park our cars and nobody wants to walk into town. Yeah, these are new things to a lot of people, but I think we'll work them out, and I think we're going in the right direction.
Well, certainly part of the factor you're going to have to be thinking about with 200 new homes is how do you supply water, sewage,
that's all
police
on the
services.
table.
I mean, all of those things, the infrastructure
Right.
that you're responsible for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in our last couple of minutes, any last things that we haven't talked about, or anything that you sort of, where you picture the kind of role that the city councils, the or the government can play in moving things more quickly in other communities like you're doing?
Well,
advice.
I think that a lot of the action comes from the ground up, the citizens, and we have a lot of smart people in this community and in every community. They need to be heard. They need to be listened to. I think the local governments need to feel not threatened by them. We all live together in this. It's a small community. You know, we bump into each other all the time. We're not enemies. We really do all want the same things. Maybe slight, little twists here and there, but we want a good life for the community. We want a safe, clean, healthy place to live in and to raise our kids and just to be happy. So I think everybody on both sides, the public and the government, needs to understand that we're not enemies. You know, we're neighbors. And let's kind of back off a little bit. Let's take a deep breath and let's talk to each other and actually talk with each other. And I found that it works. You know, I have gone into these meetings where they're almost hostile, and I'm enjoying it because this is fine. This is conversation, and I've come out, you know, with all my limbs in place and no blood, and you know, I think we come out at the end because they appreciate honesty.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
if I have something bad to say, if I have said to them, you know, we may have to raise taxes. You want all these things? We may have to raise taxes. What do you think about that? And they thought about it, and they raised their hands and said, okay, we can live with that.
We're willing to pay extra to have
To
this
get what-
quality, to get what we
exactly.
want.
So all these things are doable, and you know, I think we need to learn how to talk to each other again, be honest with each other, you know, don't spin or anything like that, and you know, we can get to where we have to go.
That's an inspiring vision.
I believe it.
Well, you're on the map ahead of many, many, many communities here.
I hope so.
Well, and to no small measure to the fact that you've been willing to bridge constituencies. You've been willing to make those conversations and find those commonalities.
And I have fun doing it too, because I'm kind of a edgy kind of guy anyway, and which is fine. You know, I like controversy, especially when it looks like it might go somewhere.
Sounds to me like you take that little bit of juicy controversy and find something creative to do with
Yeah.
it that moves things in a positive direction.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're quite
Thank you
welcome.
to your
Thank
city.
you.
I'm sure your city is grateful. Most of them are grateful, and I want to thank you for conversing with us on Peak Moment, Community Responses to a Changing Energy Future. Please join us for the next episode. Thanks.